Recently, I saw a great, really attention-grabbing headline from CBS News. 90% of Americans plan to ignore the number one piece of Social Security advice. And at first glance, that sounds like a big mistake. It sounds like Americans are ignoring smart advice. It sounds like the experts are right and the Americans are getting this very, very wrong. But generally, there's more to the story than that. And that framing, while very attention-grabbing, is a little bit too simplistic. Hey guys, what's up? I'm Aaron and welcome back to the channel. So what's the number one piece of advice that 90% of Americans are ignoring when it comes to Social Security? Well, it's said to be waiting until the age of 70 to claim benefits to receive higher monthly payments. So let's pause here for a moment because this framing makes it seem like a behavioral problem, like people just aren't listening. But we might just find if we dig into the real data that it's more likely to be a constraint problem, and that changes the narrative. So let's start with what people actually do. If waiting until 70 to claim Social Security is really the right move, you would think that most Americans would do this, or at least a significant percentage of them. But right off the bat, we see from the data that that's not the case. If we look at how and when Americans really claim Social Security, it breaks down like this. About 20 to 25% of people claim right at the age of 62 when they're first eligible. This is the most popular claiming age. Another 35 to 40% claim between the ages of 63 and 65. Roughly 25 to 30% wait until full retirement age around age 66 or 67. Then you have a smaller group, about 25% combined, who delay to 68 or 69. And then age 70, less than 10% of people wait until 70, and in some datasets it's even lower than that, closer to 4 to 8%. Let's really think about that for a moment, because less than 1 in 10 Americans are actually following what's said to be the best claiming strategy for Social Security. And if it's really optimal, why are so few people actually following it? Is it that they just don't understand the math? Well, the reality is that this advice is pretty incomplete. If you claim Social Security as early as 62, you're locking in about 70% of what you would have received at full retirement age. Then between ages 62 and 67, your benefit increases gradually, typically in the ballpark of 5 to 6% per year. Once you reach full retirement age, those delayed retirement credits kick in, and now your benefit grows at a much faster rate, 8% per year, all the way up until the age of 70. So let's put real numbers to this. If we assume your full retirement age benefit is $2,000 per month, at 62 you'd receive about $1,400 a month. But if you wait until age 70, that benefit grows to about $2,480 per month. So just stepping back and looking at that, you're going from $1,400 a month to over $2,400 a month. That is a 77% increase in monthly income. That is a big deal. And importantly, it's not banking on any sort of market returns. This is built within the structure of Social Security itself. It's giving you a guaranteed inflation-adjusted income floor that lasts for your entire lifetime. But this does come with trade-offs, because what you're really deciding is, do I take less now in exchange for more later? And depending on whether or not that's the right answer depends on your personal situation. So now that we've seen the math and just how powerful that increase can be, we need to talk about what the advice actually is, because this gets way too oversimplified. There's often this idea that every expert out there is saying that everyone should wait until 70 to claim Social Security so they get that higher monthly benefit. But this is not what most experts are saying. Some may say that, but certainly not all. And the reality is far more nuanced when you look across the research from the Social Security Administration, the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College, Vanguard, Wade Fowle, David Blanchett, Morningstar, and more. Delaying when you claim Social Security benefits can be very powerful. It can increase your lifetime income. It can reduce your longevity risk. It can function like a 6 to 8% guaranteed real return. It can offer higher survivor benefits if you're part of a married couple. That's why it's often described as one of the best deals in retirement. And that part is absolutely true. But there are conditions to it, because the real recommendation from all of the research is not wait until 70. The real recommendation is delay if you can afford to delay and if it fits your plan. This is a very different statement, because when we look at how to optimize Social Security for an individual household, there are no blanket statements that work. There are absolutely situations where the strategy of delaying is very strong. If you are someone who is likely to live a long time, if you have a family history of longevity, if you're in really good health, especially if you're a woman, because women on average tend to live longer than men, this is where this delay strategy can really shine. And this is because you're protecting against one of the biggest risks in retirement, living a long time. Or if you're a higher earner or you have a large portfolio here, Social Security is not your only income source. You have the ability to bridge the gap from when you actually step away from the workforce until the point where you actually turn on your Social Security benefits. So what you're essentially doing here is converting part of your portfolio into guaranteed inflation-protected income. And this really acts as longevity insurance. If you're part of a married couple, especially if you're the higher earner, this decision becomes even more important, because the higher benefit ultimately becomes the survivor's benefit. So this means the decision you make on when to claim doesn't just affect you, it also affects the surviving spouse. So this is absolutely a situation where you can make a strong argument for the higher earner delaying when they claim Social Security benefits. Now maybe they delay all the way to 70, or maybe they simply delay all the way to full retirement age. But in this situation, this argument for delaying carries a lot of weight. And what if you're someone who is concerned about market risk? Delaying when you claim Social Security can actually reduce the pressure on your portfolio later on. It becomes a hedge against sequence of returns risk and against running out of money, because ultimately what you're doing in this situation is giving yourself a higher guaranteed income, which takes the pressure off your portfolio and how much you would need to be drawing from it. And it's very likely that if you're in this situation, you would combine this delay strategy with working longer. And yes, of course, working longer and allowing your portfolio to build up and delaying when you claim Social Security can absolutely mean that you go into retirement with a more robust portfolio with higher benefits, with more security. But here's the other side of this, and this is the part that gets lost in all of those headlines, because there are a lot of people who should not wait until 70 to claim. If you need income, if you only have modest savings and no real way to bridge this gap, if you're still working but you're struggling, waiting to claim Social Security really may not be realistic. You shouldn't wait at the expense of your life. You shouldn't force yourself to experience a lower quality of life for a few years just to get higher benefits later. You cannot optimize a strategy you can't afford to implement. If you have health concerns or a shorter life expectancy, again, the math changes and we have to consider the break-even point, and it can make a lot of sense to claim early in these situations. The break-even point is the age at which the total dollars received from claiming later equals what you would have received if you claimed earlier. Quite simply, claiming early means more payments but smaller checks. Claiming later means fewer payments but larger checks. And the break-even ages really depends on which age you're comparing, but it tends to be in the late 70s or the early 80s. But if you're looking at your family history or your personal health and you don't think it's realistic that you're going to reach these ages, your best strategy very well could be to claim early, because that would be the strategy that would allow you to collect the maximum lifetime income in your situation. If you're retiring early and drawing heavily from your portfolio and you only have a limited or modest portfolio, delaying Social Security can actually increase your risk because you're putting more pressure on a modest portfolio earlier on. So in this situation, it can make more sense to claim early. Let's say you retire at 62 and you have a $350,000 portfolio, and let's assume you need $40,000 per year to live. Scenario 1, you delay Social Security until 70. So now for 8 years you have no Social Security income, which means the entire $40,000 per year is coming from your portfolio. That's an 11 to 12% withdrawal rate. That's not just high, that's extremely risky, because now you're putting a huge amount of pressure on your portfolio right at the start of retirement. And this is exactly when sequence of returns risk matters most. If the market drops early and you're taking out these larger draws on your portfolio, you're locking in these losses. Even if we assume modest returns, your portfolio could drop from $350,000 to somewhere in the range of $100 to $150,000 by the time you reach 70. And even with these numbers, we're still assuming there's market cooperation at play. There are absolutely situations where if you run into a severe market downturn, this portfolio could be fully depleted in this short time. So yes, if we do get some market cooperation along the way, by the time you get to the age of 70, you would have a significantly higher Social Security benefit, but it's likely you'd be looking at a portfolio that has been much more depleted than you would otherwise want. Scenario 2, you claim at 62. Let's look at the alternative. Let's say we have someone who decides to claim at 62, and their benefit is $1,500 per month, or roughly $18,000 per year. So now instead of needing $40,000 from their portfolio, they only need $22,000. Now that's a withdrawal rate around 6%. Yes, it's still elevated, but it's not out of the realm of safety if you're willing to incorporate a flexible withdrawal strategy, and it's a much better withdrawal rate than an 11 or a 12% withdrawal rate on a portfolio. So what happens now? Instead of draining your portfolio early, you're reducing the pressure on it, giving it more time to grow, reducing sequence of returns risk, and increasing the likelihood that it lasts. Here's the trade-off. You give up a higher Social Security check later in exchange for protecting your portfolio earlier on, and in some situations this can absolutely lead to a more sustainable retirement. Delaying Social Security can absolutely increase your income down the road, but it can also increase the risk of your portfolio today if you don't have sufficient assets to cover this gap. And if you're single and you have more modest assets, the benefit of delaying may be smaller, and you're not having to optimize for survivor benefits. There are no survivor benefits in a single household. And truly, with modest assets, you simply might not have the flexibility to wait. And then there's something that doesn't show up in spreadsheets. Behavior, the desire for certainty, the need for income now, peace of mind. These are very real factors, even if they're hard to put into a model. Now, if you've been listening to this and thinking, okay, but what does this mean for me? What is my ideal age to claim Social Security? You might notice that we're not trying to nail down one specific age for everyone, because it's how Social Security fits with your entire retirement plan. And one of the biggest places this shows up is when you start thinking about Medicare. This decision decision tends to happen around the age of 65 and is one of the biggest financial decisions you will ever make in your entire retirement. And it's also one of the most confusing ones. And that's why I've partnered with a company called Chapter. They're a completely independent Medicare advisory service. And they help you compare all of your options, not just one company or one type of plan. They look at your doctors, your prescriptions, your location, and find a plan that fits your life, not just one that looks good on paper. And the best part is their advice is completely free. So if you're approaching Medicare or simply just starting to think about it, or if you already have a Medicare plan and you want to make sure you chose the best one for you, feel free to reach out to them. I have an affiliate link down below. I also have their phone number. They're a wonderful resource and they're just there to help you. And they can really help to give you the confidence to know that you're not only just making the right decision for today, but also the future you. And back to the idea of claiming at 70, this is where that constraint really starts to show up in real life. Often when you hear the advice of delay Social Security until the age of 70, what's left out are the assumptions behind it. And the assumption is either that you're working or that you have the assets to support the delay. Because for most Americans, that's the only way it works. And the reality is most Americans are stepping away from the workforce in their early 60s and they only have modest portfolios and no other income stream to fall back on. In that situation, delaying isn't just difficult, it may increase your risk and it may make your entire plan more vulnerable. So for a lot of people, it's a question of what's possible. And if that's the situation you're in, claiming early could very well be the key to making your entire plan work. Now, there is also a group of people who can step away from the workforce, say, in their 50s or in their 60s and delay claiming Social Security all the way until the age of 70. But this is a smaller, more financially flexible group, and that's what we see reflected in the data. We see that a smaller percentage of people wait until 70 to claim, or it's even a smaller percentage of people who have the ability or desire to keep working until 70. For most Americans, retirement savings are limited. Social Security often replaces a very large portion of their income, sometimes 50, 60, even 70% or more. And once they leave the workforce, Social Security is a necessity to make their plan work. So rather than solely focusing on age 70, ask yourself, what problem am I trying to solve? If your goal is to maximize lifetime income, delaying helps. If your goal is to protect against living a long time, delaying helps. And if your goal is to maximize the survivor benefit, delaying helps. But if your goal is to cover expenses now to reduce stress or to avoid putting pressure on a modest portfolio earlier on, the answer might look very different. And this is where some of the more advanced research comes in, because work from Dr. Wade Fa and David Blanchett shows something very interesting. Delaying Social Security can actually increase your safe withdrawal rate. It can improve portfolio longevity, but only if you have a way to fund the gap in a sustainable way, or if you have the ability to keep working and don't need to draw on your portfolio. If you can't, the strategy actually works against you. And that's the trade-off most of these headlines don't talk about. The math behind delaying is real. It's powerful, but the blanket advice is often overstated and many people don't have the flexibility to follow it, or they shouldn't follow it. The advice from most experts is not wait until 70 to claim. The advice from most experts is that you should figure out when is the most ideal time for you or your household to claim. So what are your thoughts on headlines like this? I'd love to hear. Leave them in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. There's often this idea that, oh, I said often, somebody's going to get on my case about that. Often. Midwest people, if you're with me, that's how we say it, like tripping over my words. This is hard, like I've got different makeup, I've got different hair, I'm wearing a different shirt, I'm not wearing my black bodysuit, I'm also trying to incorporate navy. Big changes happening to Aaron talks, this is a big change. I am so subtle that like I can't even handle the smallest adjustments, but we've got changes today. I had shorter hair when I was young, like this is short to me. And so now when I look in the mirror, I see myself like heading off to 8th grade or 9th grade. Granted, this is not the face I had, but I mean largely it is, but that's not, I didn't have a facelift, but I mean like I see myself as like an 8th grader now when I look in the mirror, and I feel like good and bad about that. Like I want to come across as 38, not 8. But man, it does like makes you see yourself different. I'm obsessed with my new hair. If no one can tell, good hair day makes for a great day, right? If you know, you know. I think there's a helicopter. I'm sure you hear that. Like I just kicked my microphone. That's not just me. There's a helicopter.